Let's raise the expectations for the Bearcats football program. Now that Corey Kiner, a four-star running back, Mr. Football for the state of Ohio, is coming to the University of Cincinnati, we can raise the expectations for this year, for recruiting, for what's possible for this program. This program is not going anywhere. They could even get back to the college football playoff next year, all because Corey Kiner's coming home.
Are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So just when you think there's not going to be much happening in the offseason from now until the start of the season, September 3rd. Oh, there's a lot happening right now. And let me tell you, it's pretty significant. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. We are free and available everywhere you get your podcast. If you're watching on our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share a comment. If you're downloading from audio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast, don't forget to like, share a comment, and give it a rating. All of that on YouTube and audio helps Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. Alex Frank here with you on this Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. A happy birthday to my mom, who, not going to say how old she is or how young she is, a proud Bearcat alum. So happy birthday to her. Now, I know she's listening today. And this is going to be a fun show because we're going to talk about ambitions. We're going to talk about expectations being raised. Because when you land a four-star running back, who, mind you, has only played one season, this is just like Kareem Hunt playing a season and a half with the Chiefs and then coming home to the Browns, except this is better because this is Cincinnati and we don't live in Cleveland. Corey Kiner is coming from an SEC school west of the Mississippi to play for Cincinnati. You heard John Garcia Jr., recruiting expert from Director of Recruiting Football for Sports Illustrated, on my show last week. He's also going to be on the show again this week. You heard him talk about the Bearcats having recruited from the state of Texas a whole lot since Luke Fickell got here. But now that they have landed a transfer from the state of Louisiana, or let me channel my inner Ed Orgeron here, the great state of Louisiana. That was not great. But you get the point. And by the way, good for him, because I wouldn't want to play for Brian Kelly either. Sorry to anybody who just heard that. That is a Brian Kelly fan, but not here in Cincinnati. Corey Kiner is like, I'm going to go back to continue what you built at Cincinnati. Think about the significance of this. And I'm listening to Chad Brendel. He's on with Lance McAllister Monday night, 700 WLW Sports Talk. And Chad talked about how Corey Kiner went to LSU. And we all know when he committed on May 12th of 2020? It was May of 2020. And LSU was coming off a national championship. And they were the talk of college football, even though you knew they weren't going to be as good in 2020 as they were in 2019 with some guys named Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I wonder where they went. So Kiner commits there, and Chad talked about that. So while Cincinnati made a great run in him, while Cincinnati did everything they could, the recruiting department did everything they could, at the end of the day, the fact that Corey Kiner went to LSU was not a shock. It was completely understandable. He's a big-name running back. You want to go play your college ball at an SEC school that has had other great running backs come through that program. You're going to play in the SEC. You're going to play for Ed Orgeron. You're going to play for a defending national champion. Okay, but then he gets there. Ed Orgeron is fired after the season. And Brian Kelly comes in, and Corey Kiner goes, I'm the number 2 running back on the team, but yet I don't, let's go try to play football in my home state, in my home city. It's not like he went to Ohio State. It's not like he went to Kentucky. He's coming to Cincinnati. When you think about when you land a player of this caliber and where this player comes from, Louisiana is not in Big 12 country. We know that. The SEC is in Louisiana. Okay. But Texas is right across the way. So if we're able to get a player from Louisiana, just imagine what states like Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas, states that are around Louisiana, even Arkansas, players going to be like, whoa, what's this guy doing going to Cincinnati? But it's because the culture that Luke Fickell has built. Luke Fickell has built a tremendous culture. And now you look at the homegrown talent that's on this team. You could be talking about your starting quarterback and your starting running back, both being Mr. Football in the state of Ohio and coming from Cincinnati schools. Why? And it's not like they're coming from schools that you may not know a lot about. You know about Wyoming and you know about Roger Bacon. Think about how significant that is. And then you add your starting tight end is from LaSalle. Your other starting tight end is from Springfield, which, yes, is considered a Dayton school, but again, it's within what Luke Fickell calls the state of Cincinnati. And then you think about your starting safeties from Colerain. You have other players from the area. You have your starting defensive lineman is from Fairfield. I could go on with the players that are from this area. I just think about how significant that is. And finally, this homegrown talent. It's amazing to think that this is what has vaulted the Bearcats to a Final Four berth and probably sustainability going into the Big 12. When you can get a player like this, regardless of the talent you're losing last year, and believe me, when you're losing Ritter, Ford, Sanders, Gardner, Bryant, Cook, Pierce, the list goes on and on. But when you're able to land a player of this talent, now all of a sudden, you have to remind yourself, we might be losing guys like the players I just mentioned. But you're not thinking about that as much. I think that the thing that was driving this offseason was, oh my gosh, how are they going to replace all that talent? But now it's like, holy crap, look at how good this team can be this year. Since the news came down Monday night, I've had to remind myself, there's a lot of talent leaving. Yeah, but you also know Corey Kiner's now here. You're starting quarterback and you're starting running back, who, by the way, are going to be in Cincinnati for 3 years. Both of them potentially for the next 3 years. Desmond Ritter never had a running back play 3 straight seasons. Jared Doakes was injured in 2018. Michael Warren was only here 2 years. Jerome Ford was only here 2 years. Charles McClellan was injury prone for 4 years. Evan Prater could have the same running back for 3 years. That's continuity, where there's already continuity. Other players are going to follow suit. Now, I'm wondering seriously, what's happened down in LSU? How is a 4-star running back transferring from LSU to Cincinnati? Now, I'm not undermining Cincinnati here. We all know Cincinnati is now one of the top 10 programs in the country, potentially. But you're gonna go from LSU, where you play your home games in one of the most raucous environments in college football, and you're gonna come to Cincinnati, where, yes, the Bearcats are coming off a college football playoff berth, but there's questions surrounding this team. How are they going to replace all the talent they lost last year? How are they going to, be able to sustain their success when they join the Big 12? There's a lot of questions that are worth being asked about this program. And LSU probably does not have those. Because LSU is not as good of a program right now as Cincinnati. They've had 2 straight around 6-6 sub 500 seasons since they won the national championship. I guess they just need Burrow and Chase back or something. What is it down there? Is it Brian Kelly? Is there something we don't know that's going on in the football program? I mean, this is going to immensely help the Bearcats when they join the Big 12. And fun fact, most of the Big 12 outside of West Virginia, Cincinnati, and UCF, most of the Big 12 is west of the Mississippi. And now you're going to be able to recruit in that area. That is highly significant. That's highly significant. We'll talk more about the expectations for next year's team, how good they can be, in the future. But first, I need to tell you about Built Bar, because this is that time of year that I have pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions. I certainly have by this point. Well, actually, not this year. I'm sticking to it and eating right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? Well, if you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. It's the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They're a fan favorite with some incredible flavors, yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. Oh, that's so good. These are going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, Puffs included. 100% real chocolate. They are all about the taste of Built Bar. They make it taste delicious first. I don't know how, but then they pull it off by making it healthy every time. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We can talk about expectations for this team. I think a lot of you have the hope of, okay, let's play for a conference championship. Anything else that happens, that's icing on the cake. And I agree with you because I think those are the realistic expectations. But ambitious expectations. When you're able to land a player of Kiner's caliber, you start reaching for expectations. You start thinking really big. Remember when the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow? Some of us thought the Bengals could make the playoffs, myself included, his rookie season. Yeah, that clearly did not happen. But even going into this year, Richard Skinner from Local 12 would constantly say that he saw them anywhere between 4 and 13 wins. And when you go to the higher end of that spectrum, that scale, it's because you realized, oh, we got a quarterback who's really good. We got a wide receiver who's explosive. We've got other great playmakers on offense and a defense that's going to be much improved. And sure enough, all those things happened, and the Bengals ended up winning the AFC Championship. With the Bearcats this year, you don't have – Corey Kiner is that kind of player. He's going to bring in a remarkable resume with over 100 rushing touchdowns and 7,000 yards of Roger Bacon. He was the number 2 rusher on LSU last year. And, okay, see, don't let your mind twist you into thinking, well, he was just the number 2 running back. It's LSU. The fact that he played meaningful snaps as a true freshman at LSU is something. And oh, by the way, he has at least 3 years of eligibility. You're coming to a program that is going to be driven by the run game. So you're going to have opportunities. And I've talked about, Luke Fickell's talked about that the running back room may not be dominated by one particular player. And that's totally fine. But Corey Kiner could be that dominant player. He could be the bell cow. Because he probably has the most experience aside from Charles McClelland. And I would argue he has more experience than Charles McClelland. Because Kiner has played a season of football in the SEC. This is an instance where you like that. And you like it with Ben Bryant too. But how much does one season of the MAC, as Russ Heltman and I talked about last week on this podcast, Russ Heltman from All Bearcats, who will be on the show tomorrow, by the way, again, how much does one season of playing in the MAC benefit Ben Bryant in the quarterback battle? Playing in the SEC as a running back in the SEC West, where you're going up against Alabama, you're going up against Arkansas, you're going up against Texas A&M, you're going up against Ole Miss. All programs who were really good last year. There is a benefit to that. And I think it's going to pay major dividends for Kiner. So going into the season, we know this team right now doesn't have any players that stand out nationally. Last year there were. And there were players that kept rising in terms of their draft stock through the season. Ritter, Gardner, Bryant. This year, you're not going to have that. What you are going to have is experience. But you don't know just how good of caliber these players are because they've been sitting behind the 8-9 players who you're going to hear their names called next week in the draft. But Corey Kiner comes in. And this is a running back, no less. This is a running back. But because he comes in with this with 4 stars, he comes in with a ridiculously good resume from his Roger Bacon days. And now he's going to have the opportunity to lead the Bearcats offense because the running game is going to dominate this year's team on offense. And he's coming into a glorious situation. Hometown, he's got a good offensive line to run behind. He's got a good offensive coordinator, Gino Guidugli, who says there aren't going to be any wholesale changes to the team this year. This is an ideal situation for if you're Corey Kiner, especially because you're coming home, you're in familiar territory, you can go home to your family more often. It could not work out any better. And maybe he needed to go to LSU for 1 year and be like, okay, I know I can play at this level, but let me go somewhere where I can be the lead player. And he's going to be the lead running back for a long time. I don't see him going to the NFL draft after this season. I see at least him staying for 2 years, maybe 3, maybe more than that. But that means you're going to get Corey Kiner, I believe, for a full season in the Big 12. That's huge. You feel like all the hard work you put in 2 years ago to try and land Kiner. We kept seeing these photos of both Prater and Kiner and all these other recruits coming in from Cincinnati, Josh Wiley, and we kept dreaming about how great it would be if they were able to get these players. Kiner ultimately commits to LSU, and it felt like months of anticipation and hype were out the window. And yeah, even though we understood, it was a sickening feeling. But then this guy comes back, and the expectations are immediately raised. Immediately raised. Because you have that kind of caliber of a player. It feels like now this team can run the table. It feels like now this team is going to for sure compete for a conference championship. For sure, maybe even go 11-1. Because outside of Arkansas, who do you see the Bearcats losing to? UCF on the road? Okay, fair. I don't think that's going to happen. SMU on the road? Fair too. I don't think, again, that's going to happen. I don't see them losing a game in conference play. I don't see them losing to Indiana. I sure as hell don't see them losing to Miami or Kennesaw State. I see them winning at least 11 games. If they beat Arkansas, this team should be at least in the top 15. Because now they have that kind of player. And if the country does not know about Kiner yet, they will. I truly believe the country will know him, just like they knew Michael Warren, just like they knew Jerome Ford, just like they knew of a whole slew of running backs that have come through this Bearcats program, going all the way back to Isaiah Pede. Think about the number of running backs that you've had come through this program and then make it to the NFL, whether it be through the draft, getting your name called, or an undrafted free agent. There have been a lot of players that have come through this program at the running back position that have been successful. Kiner could be the next. And it makes you feel like you're not that far away from where you were last year. Because here's something else. The college football playoff, yes, people might think that last year's playoff berth was lucky, was a fluke. And they look at who the Bearcats are losing this year and they go, oh, they're not going back. Yeah, that's a one-hit wonder. No. It's one thing to be just that. Like you think about teams that have won Super Bowls or the NBA Finals or the World Series, and they're that one-hit wonder. They're really good one year. like the Eagles in 2017. They haven't been really that great since, although Philadelphia has made the playoffs every year, but once since then. You don't want to be that if you're Cincinnati. Like Washington and Florida State and Oregon, they've made the playoff once and they've never been back since. Michigan State, same deal, and they have not been back since, and quite frankly, they have been average at best since. You don't want to be that if you're Cincinnati. This Kiner commit is going to ensure that. In the most important season of football coming up this year, because of it's the year after the playoff, and because you're going to the Big 12, it's like in the middle of a sandwich, two giant pieces of bread, the playoff berth on this end, and then the Big 12 on this end. Right here is the middle. But you need to take advantage of all this space and opportunity that you have now that Corey Kiner is back. The space needs to, bring these two pieces of bread together. Like that. So it's a first off, a well-made sandwich, which I make plenty of those. That's what needs to happen. And Kiner coming here is going to help make sure that this season, the year after a playoff berth, and the year after losing so many great players, it's not going to be that huge of a drop-off. If the drop-off is they go 12-1 with the conference championship and don't make the playoff, that's fine. And that honestly is probably best case scenario. If the drop-off is you're 8-4, then there's an issue. If the drop-off is you're 13-0 and you don't make the playoff because there's so many other Power 5 teams in front of you, which is unfair, but at the same time understandable, that's fine too. But Corey Kiner coming back just raises the expectations and it raises your excitement for this season. Up next, I posed this question on Monday. Actually, no, I posted on Tuesday, so yesterday. And I want to revisit it because I get more and more frustrated with one other team in this city, and I think you know where I'm going. And I'm going to tell you the refreshing feeling the Bearcats athletics gives me next. But first, I have to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for you to go to your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. So why do you want to endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? And you have to wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. Well, you have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. And you can save time and money when using Rock Auto. It's a family business. They serve do-it-yourselfers. They've been doing that for 20 years. Their prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you can need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. You can go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right, so it's April 20th. And the Cincinnati Reds are 2-, well, I don't know because I recorded this before the game last night. At least 2-9, maybe 3-9, maybe 2-10. If I haven't mentioned this already, I'm going to say it again. Or if I have mentioned it, I'm going to say it again. The Cincinnati Reds last week had their worst week in the history of 150 plus years as an organization. And it's sad. It really is. Because just 2 years ago, this team was all in on winning. And now 2 years later, it appears as if, and they're not going to say they are, because that would be egregious if they did. Now they're all in apparently on losing. They're on pace to lose about 130 games. All the optimism that was there after splitting in Atlanta, winning 2 out of 4. You come back home for opening day, you got 2 games against the Guardians, you feel like you can win, and they haven't. And then you combine the losing of last week and then losing on Monday to San Diego, and you put what ownership said, what Phil Castellini said about where else are you going to go on top of it. And a franchise that has been built on tradition, greatness, and history and pride is now just abysmal, a punching bag, a punchline. And I just look at teams around Cincinnati. I look at Bearcats baseball, who may not have the best talent, but Scott Googins puts that team in a position to win every single game. And in games that get blown out the next day, more often than not, they bounce back. Bearcats football, Luke Fickell and that program, they could have just said, well, we're a group of 5 teams, so this is all we can do. Hell no, if they said that. If they had said that, they wouldn't have been in the college football playoff. That much we do know. They kept building and building and building and recruiting. They were achieving the impossible right before our eyes. Because even in 2019, when they had a good recruiting base going, the program had been built back, they had an identity, you're like, oh, they're never going to get to the college football playoff. And then they did. In 2020, they were right there. They were ranked number 7 at one point. And then the next year, they were ranked number 4. When you're able to gain program-changing players like Desmond Ridder and Josh Wiley and Leonard Taylor and Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant and Jerome Ford, you can get to where you want to go. And Cincinnati has built the way for other programs that have been really good at the group of 5 level. UCF's going to the Big 12. You can argue Cincinnati's a reason why. Houston, Boise State, Memphis, a lot. So it's just refreshing when I look at the Bearcats programs and I look at Wes Miller, who may not have an identity yet with his program, but I see them competing. And I look at baseball and I look at the crowds that have been on hand for a lot of the games this season. I look at the great numbers that individual players are posting. I look at the culture that Scott Googins has established. I look at the success they've had. It's palpable. But why can't the Reds do that? For a franchise whose fan base adores the team. Last year, the city was all in on the Reds in the summer. Castellanos and Winker and Jonathan India and the renaissance of Joey Votto. And that's all gone this year. You just wonder what happened that allowed for this stark contrast of just you go from all in on winning, and now you don't know where you're going, and the team stinks. College athletics aren't like professional sports. There's money involved in professional sports. So when you hear Nick Kroll say that they have to align payroll with their resources, by the way, I interpreted that this way today. I don't think they know what the resources they have. Because if they did, they would have re-signed Castellanos. They wouldn't have traded away Winker and Suarez. They wouldn't have traded away Sonny Gray. They had the resources to compete. Or maybe they didn't own the resources, they just forgot about the players I just mentioned. Aligning payroll with your resources. Now, did the pandemic have an impact on them? Yes, that's understandable. But other teams have spent money. The Twins, the Dodgers, the Braves. Notice where all those teams are going. Notice how all those teams are actually really good. Twins weren't maybe that great last year, but still, that's a solid ball club. That's had a lot more success since 1995 than the Reds have. So when I'm on a college campus, and yes, there is money involved in college athletics. That is undeniably true. But it's about competing to win, man. Like I look at Bearcats football every single year. The last 4 years was competing to win every single game. Bearcats basketball, same way. Baseball, same way. They were competing to win every single game. And why can't the Reds do that? Yes, there is money involved. There is a business in professional sports. But it's also about playing to win. You have people who care about your product and your business to want to try and win. Luke Fickell understands that. Wes Miller understands that. Scott Googins understands that. Michelle Clark-Hurt understands that. I mean, I could go through any other coach Neil Stafford understands that. There's a lot of great coaches. Mandy Commons DeSalle understands that. All these coaches at Cincinnati understand that this is a city that does win. Basketball is one. Baseball now is starting to win more. And it's a big, and it was once a baseball town. Now it's a football town. And damn it, Luke Fickell understands that. Luke Fickell got the program back to where it was in 2009 and then some. And with a player like Corey Kiner, those expectations are only going to continue. We'll continue the Corey Kiner conversation tomorrow. All Bearcats reporter and Sports Illustrated reporter and radio host on 89.3. I forget the call letters. I'll look them up for tomorrow's show because you know him, Russ Heltman. He's going to join me tomorrow. John Garcia, Jr., Director of Recruiting for Football at Sports Illustrated, joins me Friday. So that is the rest of the week for you here on Locked On Bearcats. Thank you for making it, as always, your first listen every day. Make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Follow me on Twitter at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's, NNATI. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_, and email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. It's all lowercase, alex3frank@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Locked On Bearcats YouTube channel. You can like and share a comment on this video. And if you're downloading from Apple, Spotify, or Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts on audio, to like, share, comment, and give it a rating. All of this helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. For Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.